Hey, what's going on today, YouTube? Today is going to be kind of an unscripted update video on how my Japanese progress has been going. And I know I haven't done one of these videos since I believe May or April, and so I think it's about time to have an update on how my Japanese progress is looking. So, some of my recent videos have talked about me changing and reshaping the way that I'm going about learning Japanese, and that is correct. So these last couple of months, I've really been just trying to dial in on how I want to enjoy learning Japanese enjoy going about learning Japanese, and how to change my process to make it a little bit more enjoyable. And so if you've been following my channel, you have kind of an understanding of how I've gone about learning Japanese so far. So in the beginning, it was Anki heavy, with a lot of sentence mining and a lot of Anki. Anki is a lot of what my previous Japanese learning has been. And so if you've done Anki, you know it's not the most fun thing. It's simply just a spaced repetition flashcard system. And so I know it's really effective, but for me it's not enjoyable as much as it has been in the past. And so I've been trying to switch it around. So one thing that the biggest change that I'm doing to my Japanese studies at the current moment is switching to a heavily reading focused centric way of studying, and being heavily influenced by Stephen Kaufman and Steve Krashen on their big belief in the power of reading. I have gone and decided on going about learning Japanese that way, moving onwards. So these last couple of weeks, I've been thinking about dropping Anki, whether I should continue with Anki, and my ultimate decision is yes, I'm going to continue with Anki, but it's going to be at a much slower pace than before. So I've been slowly ramping down on my Anki, going from like 50 to 30 to 10, and so I think I'm going to either keep it at around 10 or bring it down to 5. So that way I still keep Anki in my Japanese repertoire or my Japanese tools and resources, and still get some efficiency out of Anki, as I do believe Anki is still pretty efficient in trying to go about, I guess, being exposed to words, because you're not necessarily learning new stuff in Anki. That's not its purpose. So that is kind of a change in the way that I'm going about learning Japanese, and it's been heavily influenced by my motivation towards learning Japanese. And going back to the main root reason why I started learning Japanese was to understand the stories and understand the content that I was consuming. And so, that is the big thing. And a lot of the content is reading heavy. So like manga, light novels, I would love to be able to dive into that content, and that's what I'm diving into right now. Of course, anime is still there, love it, but I want to be able to read at a higher level. So yeah, in order to do that, I gotta read. So where does that put my study hours? These last couple of months have been pretty erratic. I haven't been able to accurately track and accurately follow my Japanese over these past months. Going back all the way to, I would say, even like March, I haven't been accurately tracking my journey, and so that's been like 5 months. What I can say is that I kept studying, or I kept exposing myself to the language for more than an hour a day, because for a fact I know I watched Japanese YouTube for at least an hour a day, because I consume Yuri's content on YouTube and some other related content. So an hour a day completely being exposed to Japanese, that's been pretty easy for me. The only thing that I wish I tracked a little bit more is my active studying. So the only numbers that I kind of have is today is what I'm going to talk about, what I've been doing for the past month, as that's a little bit easier to recall. And so for this past month, more or less for this past week or two, I've been consuming manga. And so I think one important thing is, for me at least, since anime was one of the key reasons why, the key motivating reasons towards learning Japanese for me, I went back and I watched some animes that are being released in this summer, and they're being released too slow. So I was like, gosh dang it, I'm just going to read the manga. And so that's where it put me at now. And so I think this might be a great way of finding content to read, is if you're an anime fan like myself, find an anime that is being released and read ahead in the Japanese raw manga, because number one, mangas are, I wouldn't recommend doing it with light novels if you're a beginner like me, or I don't even know what stage I'm at right now, but I wouldn't recommend reading light novels from the beginning. I'd recommend going with mangas, because light novels, they don't have pictures, and manga, you can consume the content while still enjoying it because you have words and then you have pictures, so the content in the story is a little bit easier to digest, and so that adds to the overall comprehension of the material, and that is what you want to be doing in the beginning. And then, you know, once I'm through kind of these mangas, I'm gonna transition over down to light novels, and the light novel that I've been trying to read right now is Classroom of the Elite, and it's got a lot of light novel content, a lot of a lot of stuff to read, so I'm looking forward to that. But I think it's a little bit beyond my level, as I was searching up words almost like every sentence, and so yeah, it was a little bit harder to digest. And so that's why I kind of moved over to manga, but reading is still reading. And so comprehension is going to build the more that I read. And it's kind of one of those things where you just have to take faith in the process. And I've subscribed to that doctrine, so to speak. And just believing that progress is going to happen. So if I don't see any progress happening within like a month or two, I mean, that's something to note, but I don't believe so based on anecdotal evidence out there and other stuff that's not anecdotal. So I look forward to seeing my progress in that. And so you may be wondering as well, some content that I've released on this channel is about, you know, speaking and Italki. And so yes, I'm trying to branch back into going into Italki. You know, I would love to be able to go back and start speaking again. I'm reaching that 2-year mark, and so this 2-year mark, you know, everyone wants to see how much I can speak, I guess, generally after 2 years. So that is one thing that I'm preparing for by not preparing. So yeah, it'll probably just happen sporadically. I'll probably be like, oh, I think I want to speak for my 2-year mark, and then just do the conversation on Italki and then just release it that way. So look forward to that. It's got to be coming up within the next month or so, because my starting point was August, September, so I haven't really established, you know, when I started, but it's changing. August, September, that's what I know. But yeah, that is kind of what I've been up to lately. One more thing I wanted to note: how many hours have I been spending? This is what I was supposed to say a little bit earlier. I have spent in the last, I would say, 2 weeks. So I've read roughly 140, not roughly, I've read 143 chapters of manga. And based on a little bit of a stream that I did yesterday, the calculation that I'm kind of making is that it takes me on average about a minute to read per page of manga. And so that consists of, you know, looking things up, rereading, and I know I did plenty of that while reading the manga. And so what that comes out to is around 48 or so hours of reading within these last week and a half, 2 weeks, just from manga alone. And that number is calculated by taking that 143, multiplying it by 20 pages per manga, and then dividing that by 60 to get the hours. So I'll put like a little bit of a text thing from my video editing. And then, yeah, that kind of puts me at the hours that I've read for these past week and a half. And I think it's not too bad. That averages to, what was that, 14 days, 47 divided by 14. I don't know, let's say 3 or so hours of reading per day. That averages about 3 or so hours of reading per day, which isn't too bad. It's not amongst the levels of the highest, but it's still pretty good. So yeah, that has been good progress in my opinion, and the key thing is that the content is compelling, and I've found myself lost in the content sometimes to where the hours just go by quickly. So yeah, that is today's video. I don't want to go much past 10 minutes, but other than that, you know, look forward to those other videos. Thank you for watching today's video, and good luck in your studies out there. I'll see you again in a future video.